Democracy is built to support liberty. The question is, in a digital age when social media affects every aspect of our life, democracy is endangered. Do you believe that you still have free will? Do you believe that you still have the freedom of choices? Don't you feel that sometimes you're manipulated? As a global society, we're entering a series of profound transitions, the like of which the world has never seen, one of which is political transition. We have to admit that new politics is in town. It is never going to be only about right versus left or red versus blue. It is about old versus new. Social media has already become the indispensable conduit for people to keep up with the news, the way to imagine the world, and a source to construct values. There are 3.48 billion active social media users in 2019. They constantly contribute to the database a dozen times a day. If social media is abused, then guess what? How easy will it be for people like us, who are using it, to be manipulated? In 2016, there were two black swan events that shocked the world. One is the Brexit referendum, and the other, the US presidential election. They subvert the cognition of most political scientists, sociologists, and major polling institutions. Are these coincidences? Of course not. They were carefully planned and manipulated behind the scenes. Before the referendum, opinion polls of major news media showed that the majority of the British public would choose to remain in Europe. The noticeable fact, however, was that the biggest sample size was only about 5,000 people. The end result, in sharp contrast with the opinion polls, was that 33,577,342 turned out to vote in the referendum in June 2016, with 48.1% for stay and 51.9% for leave. Vote Leave won. Vote Leave organization hired a Canadian political consultancy and technology company, Aggregate IQ. Aggregate IQ micro-targeted 3 million extra people who never voted before the Brexit referendum. They designed and distributed thousands of different adverts that vary, depending on who they're sending them to.
For example, on Facebook, your timeline is slightly different to your friends, your moms, and so on. Their software can test how effective certain ads are on certain people in terms of liking, clicking, sharing, and learn how to adapt them, to improve them and in real time.
All these aim at most effectively targeting the hearts of the persuadables and lure them to the side they want them to be. However, one fact that is most easily neglected is the silent majority. Public opinion polls then showed that the majority would choose to stay, and the mass media also showed the same, because those who supported stay had the power of speech. Surprisingly, when big data analytics, micro-targeting ads came into play, the silent majority of society was activated and manipulated, and their power would produce a drastic impact on the referendum.
Interestingly, Robert Mercer, the man behind Aggregate IQ, is also a major funder of the Trump campaign for the 2016 presidential election. His close friend, Steve Kevin Bannon, is the former chief strategist of the Trump administration.
Over 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are created every single day, and it's only going to grow from there. By 2020, it's estimated that 1.7 megabytes of data will be created every second for every person on Earth. Patterns form, behaviors overlap. We're updating and uploading all the time by choice, teaching data companies and advertisers exactly who we are and what we want. You can say that we can selectively display what we want to show on social media or even lie. However, we do not fake the browsing records and reading records. It's unlikely that we will spend plenty of time looking at things that we're not interested in, just to get big data to collect the wrong data. These data enable those companies that control the data to learn about us and know what's our emotional resonance, hopes, dreams, aspirations, fears, and suspicions. They certainly also know what we're most susceptible to, because everybody has their pain point. Anybody could get indignant at certain news. It's hard for one to stay calm and keep a cool head at all times. Intelligence algorithm, however, is always rational, so its accuracy in making predictions is very high, and sometimes to a humiliating extent. The abuse of big data is actually creating a toxic culture where nobody cares about the truths, and people read what they want to read and listen to what they want to listen. It is becoming increasingly difficult to build trust, but way easier to create hostility. If we don't take actions to make a change, the most successful politicians tomorrow will be those individuals and companies that control vast amounts of data. Facebook, Google, Alibaba, you name it. Let's define where the general public stand in relation to the Change House model. Based on the Digital News Report 2017 of Reuters Institute, a survey of about 70,000 respondents in 36 countries in Europe, America, and Asia Pacific indicates that only 24% think social media distinguishes between true news and fake news. Given the limited sample population, I'm not certain to what extent the survey result reflects the opinions of the public. I would argue that a large number of people are either in a contentment and a complacency house where they are unaware of the radical consequences of social media, or they are happy with the status quo. We surely see many people in the denial and denigration house, where they somehow sense the negative aspects of social media, but are not yet ready to acknowledge them. There should be a huge crowd of people in the confusion and chaos house, where they realize the dangers of social media, but are not sure what actions to take. All these mean a change to the status quo is highly necessary to renew and revitalize social media. Given the highly unexpected and somewhat disastrous outcomes of the Brexit referendum and the US 2016 presidential election, I would firmly recommend a revolutionary change to the way social media works in order to prevent information and data distortion and eventually manipulation of public opinions. Using the DMAIC model, the first step is to define the problem. Obviously, the problem is the manipulation of public opinions by social media, as clearly demonstrated in the Brexit referendum and the 2016 US election, and Shailene Woodley's live streaming of her arrest to 40,000 Facebook viewers to block the construction of a pipeline in Dakota. The second step is to measure or quantify the problem. Precisely measuring or quantifying the problem is crucial to the success of solving the problem. This step involves mapping out the current status quo, determining how current status works, looking for what might be causing the problems, planning on data collection, and assurance of data reliability. Once the problem is quantified, the next step is to analyze the root causes of problem. For instance, human psychology and commercial interest. A checklist can be developed for examination in detail to identify all direct and indirect causes. The fourth step is to improve. Given the magnitude and the root causes of the problem, solutions should be developed carefully and implemented with adjustments needed. These solutions include litigation, training, collaboration, and so on. The fifth and last step is control, which is about how improvement can be sustained and how gains can be maintained. I hope that with joint and concerted efforts from all parties concerned, we will be able to take back control in the future.